So lesson 3.3 is called Looking for the Missing Carbon. The warm-up question asked you what happened to the carbon that used to be in the air of the biodome. And in the previous lessons, you should have read about how the carbon cycle cycles carbon in and out of different parts of the ecosystem, and that the total amount of carbon always stays the same. So claim 1 says that the carbon is no longer in the biodome, so it decreased. And claim 2 says the carbon is now in another part of the ecosystem, so the total carbon stayed the same. So claim 2 is the better choice here. And at the bottom, you should have explained because of the carbon cycle, the same amount of carbon is always in the ecosystem. I tried to come up with like an analogy for some of my kids last time, and I kind of came up with like, if my friend came over my house and we baked cookies, and I baked 10 cookies and kind of split them into 2 sections, like 5 and 5, how many total cookies do I still have in the house?
12.
12?
Yeah.
5 and 5?
5 and 5 is 18.
Yeah, 5 plus 5 equals 12.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
No, it's 18. Jeez.
Interesting. So you're going to have 10 cookies, and then if I decide to give one of my 5 to my friend, and now we have a pile of 4 and 6, well, we still have 10 cookies in the house. That hasn't changed. Just the area where the cookies are located has changed.
Yeah, they're in human stomachs.
Not yet. I didn't tell you that they ate them yet. I just said we put them in 2 piles.
You have to eat all the
same
cookies
difference.
for your pancreas.
Not same difference.
Okay.
So
not clean, not clean.
anyway, so that was the warm-up question. You should have said that the total amount of carbon stayed the same. So the next 2 asks you, well, then what happened to the carbon that was in the atmosphere, the abiotic matter in the biodome? Because we previously learned that the carbon in the biodome is decreasing. So we want to know, well, what happened to it? So it asked you to open the sim. Excuse me. It asked us to run it for 20 time units, then kill off all the decomposers, because if we remember, all the decomposers died.
Rip and tear.
Couldn't you just lessen the amount of decomposers rather than going and killing them all?
Yeah.
You probably could, but you wouldn't see the results quite as quickly as we'd like you to see them. So I think that's why you kill all them.
How long does the sim run until it resets?
I really don't know the answer to that, actually.
It's infinite. It doesn't stop. I tested it. I left it running for an entire day. It didn't stop.
For real?
Yeah, for real. Because I accidentally left my laptop open.
All right, so we're running it till we hit around there. Then I have to kill all my decomposers.
Rip and tear.
Kill all the decomposers. It's not like a 90,000-year-old smoker.
Yeah.
If someone lived that long, I'd be very impressed.
If somebody smoking lived that long, I'd be very impressed.
All right, so I killed all the decomposers, and now I'm going to run it again. And you can watch this as long as you want to. You're going to notice a lot of ESMs are coming down here, energy storage molecules. And I like to look at this graph down here. And if we remember, this is our carbon graph. Remember, the total amount of carbon stays the same, but we've switched places now. So the purple carbon in the atmosphere is decreasing, while the green carbon in the atmosphere is increasing. But something else to note is, if we turn this off and turn on the energy storage molecules, we notice that while the total amount is going up just slightly every time, they've kind of switched places. So the energy storage molecules in living things is continuing to go downward, where the energy storage molecules in the dead matter is continuing to rise. So where you're actually gaining energy storage molecules in the dead matter. Dead matter is accumulating.
Wait, none of the equinox was that dead matter, right?
What?
None of the equinox was that dead matter, right? Nobody died during the experiment from lack of carbon dioxide.
No.
Okay, good.
Sadly not.
And if you go back to our simulation, now look at all the stuff that's now in the dead matter.
Oh, well.
It's all dead.
All dead. Okay. So we're going to pause there and go back to our original question here. So our original question says, what happened to the carbon that used to be in the air? Where did the carbon go? So remember, carbon gets cycled through living things as well. So producers, consumers, decomposers, dead matter. The best choice was dead matter because we noticed that all of the ESMs had accumulated down there in the dead matter. And then again, the screenshots haven't been working the best, so don't worry about the screenshot if it's not working for you.
I figured it out.
Yeah, it's easy. You use these things called commands, which allow you to take screenshots.
Oh, I use Paint, Microsoft Paint.
Yeah, you can also just save it as something. I don't know why. Like right click and then save image to desktop, and then you can have it on your desktop. So I don't know for having that much.
I mean, like I use the snip tool, but that's just me personally.
Yeah, the snip tool is what I use for my laptop.
But like not everyone. I just discovered that last year. It was the most magical thing.
Yeah, it is.
And then just explain your prediction. Explain what happened in the simulation.
Yeah.
As a review, this key concept is the concept that carbon stays the same no matter what. So if carbon increases in the abiotic matter in the atmosphere, then it decreased in the biotic matter, and vice versa. If it decreased in the abiotic matter, it increased in the biotic matter. All right, then we move on to the next question. Activity 3 is revisiting the Biodome files to find out why did the decomposer population die off? Why did it decrease so much? Do you guys remember what you wrote for that? There's actually 2 answers you could have written.
I was going to say because they didn't have enough resources given to them. So
like you're on the right track, Zach. So if we look at, I think it's number 2. We look at which talks about the jobs of all the econauts. One of the jobs was to bury all of the dead matter in the ground.
Yeah.
And it says, in order to keep the biodome looking orderly and full of life, we will bury any animals or plants that die. They will be placed in sealed garbage bags and buried at least 6 feet underground. We will bury all garbage as well.
So that's why they bury our humans underground that far.
Well, yeah, so...
Right, but if you read this Post-it note right here, somebody wrote a comment on it and said, why did they decide to bury the garbage and the dead matter? A lot of decomposer bacteria can't survive below 6 feet because they need oxygen.
Yeah, because we're smart and we want to kill everything after death.
So, Zach, you're on the right track there. They aren't getting resources.
That wasn't Zach!
Who said something about... Zach was the one who answered earlier about resources.
Yes, ma'am, Marino.
Yes. Yeah. So they're not getting the resources they need because the dead matter is not only past 6 feet in the ground, but it's also sealed in garbage bags.
Yeah, like,
so they can't access it.
Yeah. Oh, wait, they're putting plastic in the ground.
Yeah, right. That's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just...
Yeah, that's just...
That's great.
Intelligence 100.
So one answer you could have had was the decomposers died off and declined so much because the dead matter was either buried too deep for the decomposers to reach and they died, or they were sealed in garbage bags and couldn't access the dead matter. The other file that we should take note of is file number 3, which talks about which organisms should they put in the biosphere to begin with. And someone wrote on here in a little post-it, I wonder why they decided not to include worms. Bacteria need worms to break dead matter into smaller pieces so bacteria can feed on it. So they decided not to put worms in this biosphere, and it sounds like worms would have helped the decomposers. So you could have also had there's no worms in the biodome in order to break down the dead matter and help the bacteria decomposers break them down. So yes.
Wait, do worms like reproduce, or do they just like cut themselves into little bits and go on with their lives?
So worms can reproduce on their own. So sometimes if they get cut in half, they can actually each half can grow back its own half.
Yeah,
So
I used to do that as a
they
kid.
can reproduce that way. And otherwise, I'm not sure about the reproduction of worms. Can they do it? I think they just reproduce on their own.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there's different types of worms out there, but
yeah.
they're not all exactly the same. But they can. They're like they're almost like starfish. They can like regenerate themselves, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What did you say? Oh, regenerate.
They can.
So are they like immortal or?
Wait, why would they be immortal?
Not quite.
Because they can literally just regenerate themselves over and over and over again. I know it kind
I'm
of.
not saying nothing will kill them. Things can still kill them, but.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about just the earthworms, they reproduce with two of them. They can.
Okay then.
Ooh.
Yeah. But yeah, there's so many different types of worms, and so yeah, there are worms that can be divided.
I see a cattail.
Yeah.
Regenerate half their body.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cut them up with food.
So you could have had either of those answers for why did the decomposers decrease. You needed to have a claim up here as to answering it, and then tell us where you found your evidence, which file. Hey, no eating my lunch. And then we move on to the homework. The homework asks you about movement of carbon and asks you to do this sorting activity. So we can click on the carbon in the biodome. And it wanted you to complete this sorting tool. So the first thing we can figure out is up here, the total carbon in an ecosystem. We know that the total carbon should do what?
Stay the same.
Should stay the same. Nice, Zach. So then it also told you that because the carbon in the abiotic matter and the carbon in living things decreased, what should we put down here for dead matter?
It would have increased.
It would have increased in order to offset it, right? So that's what your sorting tool should look like. If you click the hand in button up here, it will screenshot it into here. So you can see it.
Yeah.
And then explain why you think that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
And that is lesson 3.3. Any questions on that?
Not really, no.
Cool. All right, and then 3.4 is really what tied everything together and finished up our biodome situation. So the warm-up gave you a scenario about this guy named Quincy and wanted you to put some events in order based on cause.
That was easy.
Yeah, the final one is that Quincy was late to first period. But what are the things that led up to him being late to first period? So what was the first thing that
first one, last one.
What?
Yeah. What middle one?
Middle one goes first.
Yeah.
Left one goes
second, and then last one goes
last.
last.
So first, Quincy stayed up late. So Quincy overslept. So Quincy missed the bus. So
Quincy missed the bus.
Yes.
Middle, first, last. Middle, first.
Yes, good. Middle, first, last. Nice. Okay. So now we're going to take that information and we're going to apply it to this situation, which is the cause and effect in the biodome. And I think this is the trickiest activity because you have to remember everything about each of these things and try to put together what caused what else to happen. So the first thing we know is that the econauts buried dead matter. And the last thing we know is that the plants and animals did not have enough energy storage molecules. So the biodome failed, right? So now we need to figure out, well, what are the four things in between? And your options down here are the rate of photosynthesis decreased, the rate of cellular respiration decreased, the number of decomposers decreased, and the amount of carbon dioxide in the air decreased. So we just finished talking about the econauts burying the dead matter. What did that directly lead into?
The decomposers.
Yes, so because the econauts buried the dead matter, it did not allow the decomposers to break down. Oh, wait, here comes Bessie. No, maybe not. Is that Bessie?
Nope, it's not Bessie.
It's connecting the audio. That's all I see.
You there, Bessie? No. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep talking. So because the econauts buried the dead matter, the decomposers could not access it in order to break it down. So we know that the rate or the number of decomposers decreased, and we actually took away an entire group from our living things. So now we have producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, but we do not have decomposers anymore. Now, so because of that, what's the next step? What do decomposers do that now is not being done because now there's no more decomposers? This is the trickiest one, I think. People keep
The
getting.
rate of cellular respiration decreased.
Yes, Zach, very good. So decomposers, a lot of people get stumped because they can't remember if they do photosynthesis or cellular respiration. Plants are the only ones that can do both.
Wait, but how though?
What do you
How
mean?
could they do both? How could they
So
do
plants make their own food, right? They take sunlight, they take water and carbon dioxide, and they make their own food inside of their cells. And then with that food, that sugar, they take the sugar and they take oxygen and they turn that into energy, and they release things like that. So they can actually do both. That's cellular respiration.
That's pretty impressive.
It is pretty impressive, isn't it? Consumers and decomposers, things like that, we have to get our energy, our food from somewhere else because our cells are not designed to do that. So we need to eat other things. We get our food, our sugars from other things. So today I was a primary consumer and I'm eating a salad for lunch. And so I'm getting that energy. I'm taking in my salad. That's going to turn into sugar for my body. I'm also breathing in oxygen. And by doing those two things through cellular respiration, my cells are going to make energy for my body, and they're going to release a byproduct that we don't need in order to survive. Does anyone know what that is? You breathe it out back into the air.
Yeah.
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide.
Right. So
I was the fastest.
right. Good. So all organisms do cellular respiration, and so they all give off carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Well, now you've decreased the amount of cellular respiration that's happening because you took away an entire living group. You took away all the decomposers. So now cellular respiration is going down. So now what's also going to go down?
The amount of carbon dioxide in the air.
Yeah, they know.
Yes, so now carbon dioxide in the air is going to go down because now we're not releasing as much carbon dioxide because there's not as much cellular respiration happening. So now we've progressed to carbon dioxide. So now who needs carbon dioxide to do something?
You.
The plants. Wait, no.
Yes,
Yeah,
and you're right. The plants need carbon dioxide to do photosynthesis. Well, now if there's less carbon dioxide, now we have less photosynthesis happening. Well, if we have less photosynthesis happening, now the plants aren't making as much food and they're dying. Well, now if the plants are dying, now the animals are dying and they're not getting as much energy storage molecules.
The animals
That's
can
how you get all the way to the end.
Yep.
So this is, I think this was the most complicated because you really had to think about each step, right? So we have the econauts buried the dead matter, that caused the decomposers to go down, that caused less cellular respiration, that caused less carbon dioxide in the air, which caused less photosynthesis, which means the plants and animals started to die. No, not as much energy storage molecules. Is everyone okay with that idea?
Yes.
Awesome. Nice job. So Ben, you seem to get it more with me. I'm really glad about that. Just double check your work when you go back, okay?
Okay.
All right. And then the activity number 3, I see what's going on in this chat here. Big exhale, we okay?
Sharp exhale.
So inhale, big exhale.
They'll be-
Then we go into this biodome model, and it wanted you to try to come up with a model for basically the simulation. How is everything in the ecosystem connected? So this is my grand finale here. Yeah, it's a lot.
I didn't think I did all that.
Well, you can always go back.
I did.
Yeah.
That's why we're going over it now, right? So the first thing that I usually think of is like the sun. So the sun is shining down, and the plants are really the only one who take the sunlight and turn it into something else. So I put in the process of photosynthesis. We're taking sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. We're turning it into energy storage molecules. They also, remember, do cellular respiration, and so I added that as well, and we have our energy storage molecules down here.
Yeah.
Each of the other living things does cellular respiration and has energy storage molecules inside it. Each time a primary consumer eats a plant, it transfers its energy over to that consumer. So I put an arrow going here. Same thing for the secondary consumer. When the secondary consumer eats the primary consumer, it transfers its energy. So I put it over there. Every time one of the living things dies, it transfers those energy storage molecules to the dead matter. So I put an arrow for each one of those. The only one that can get energy from dead matter are the decomposers, which are over here. And I put an arrow going up that way. Then we start talking about carbon dioxide, which is up here in the atmosphere. Everything that does cellular respiration gives off carbon dioxide. So I put a little gray arrow going up from each of the living things. The only one that takes carbon dioxide from the air and does something with it are the producers, like the plants. So it's hard to see, but I put an arrow going down over here. And that's the great circle of life.
And that's the great death.
Yeah.
It's a great death.
So your model, I understand it's not quite this detailed, but this is kind of what they were looking for as far as everything interacting with each other.
Okay, I just did the carbon dioxide arrows. I didn't even think about all the other stuff.
I think it's because there's like a little toolbar here, and you got to scroll down.
Well, yeah, I did that, but I honestly didn't even think about everything else that carbon dioxide goes through.
Yeah, so be careful. So I mean, it does say show how carbon moves throughout the different parts, but carbon dioxide is in gray, whereas the energy storage molecules are in like the brownish color, things like that.
Yeah.
All right, so that's that. And then, again, if you click hand in, it's going to take a screenshot for you and put it right here.
Yep.
Then I don't think we actually were able to see this part. This is a video of Biosphere 2, and the University.
We never saw that on there.
Yeah, University of Arizona actually built a Biosphere, and they're going to show you what we're going to do with it. So I'm going to show you this video. Here we go. Can everyone hear?
Yes.
Okay.
So today at Biosphere 2, our visitors come inside and they get to see all the biomes up close and personal. And that lets us save money on the energy cost of keeping a closed system, but it also lets us take parts of Biosphere 2 and close it off when we need to do research, for example, in the rainforest or with our landscape evolution observatory. Hi, Taylor. I'm a scientist at Biosphere 2. This is the rainforest biome, which is like a model of a natural tropical forest. But in this model, we can actually control the climate, which is something you can't do in the natural world. Okay, Steve, can we get some rain in the northeast quadrant, please? For northeast overhead quadrant, ready to go. We can make rainfall, we can put the forest through drought, and we can raise temperatures to simulate what a hotter world might look like. In my research here, I hope to answer one of the big scientific questions of our time, which is how tropical forests will respond to a warming climate. During photosynthesis, leaves exchange molecules between the leaf and the atmosphere. In the rainforest biome, we can seal off this tropical forest, and that way we can monitor the coming and going of all of the molecules through the forest. This helps us understand how the forest will interact with the climate. We can measure how a whole ecosystem responds to changing climate.
When the Biosphereans lived inside, they had a farm space where they grew their food crops. Today, we're using that farm space to run our institutional experiment studying water. For 10 years, we'll learn everything about how water interacts with the complex landscape and how water, plants, and soil move carbon and energy in a hotter, drier world.
My name is Aditi Sengupta. I study soil microbes, and today I'm going to take some soil cores from the Landscape Evolution Observatory. So once I have the soil samples, I'm going to take them back to my lab, and then I'm going to analyze them for all the kind of different microbes that I can find in there.
The challenge out in the real world is you have all of these uncontrolled variables that you don't exactly know what is driving the system. And what we can do here at a really big scale is we can control those variables, but still see systems operating at scales that are more realistic than what you find in a small laboratory.
All right. So I thought that was pretty cool because they can actually control like the weather and things like that, and they're able to study what are the effects of some of these things, especially if our temperatures are going to continue to climb and our climate is going to continue to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Is Damien playing Fortnite?
Nope.
Oh, I thought he were.
He's listening intently to our lesson.
Oh, good.
I am listening intently.
So then the homework was just simply the wrap up. It asked you to explain to the econauts how their plans for the next biodome should be different. And I think there's one major thing that should be changed. Did any of you guys finish this part? You all,
Yeah.
what did you suggest that they change?
Not bury the bags.
Yeah, right. Let's not bury the dead matter, and let's not put it in garbage bags where the decomposers cannot access it. And I would explain why they shouldn't do that. You can use the activity 2, the sequencing. Feel free to go back to it and like explain each step. Well, because you buried the dead matter, you killed all the decomposers, which then led to blah, 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 right? And that's lesson 3.4, and that basically wraps up the biodome scenario. Anyone have any questions on that?
Not really, no.
All right, Mr. Hurd, tag you're it.
Tagger it.
He's not gonna figure out how to turn on his.
Mike.
I got it.
Okay, good.
All right, guys.
He's
So
got it.
here we are in lesson, chapter 4, and again, what's happening in these last chapters of Amplify's units is they're giving us another scenario, and so now we have how do we analyze claims and evidence, and so this is something that Amplify really wants you guys to get good at, is not just to know the knowledge about photosynthesis and cellular respiration, but apply that to a real world or a real world like situation. So they start off in the warm up talking about deforestation. So deforestation is when all the trees in the area are cut down or burned. And so it could look like this, where you have nice green forest eventually turns into, just open land. Okay?
Oh,
And
wow.
so to start us off, they just wanted you guys to think, why would people do this? Why would they remove all the trees? What are some of the reasons that people have removed trees from the area, from an area?
We need paper.
All right. To make paper
To make
from trees. What else?
I think, don't you need to make like something about like carbon dioxide from like coming off the?
Well, we'll get to that, Ben. We'll get to that. But what are the reasons we cut down trees? That's what we're asking.
To make, well, does syrup count? Because you can get like maple trees and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, like,
Yeah, we do get a lot of stuff from trees, including maple syrup.
To get firewood for the house.
Okay. So we could say to make paper, firewood. Is that one word or two? Firewood. How about lumber?
Yeah, lumber too.
From trees. Why else can we clear the land?
To build a military base to just show how military powerful the United States is.
Okay, Zach. How about
I
we
would
just
think
say,
about, like, especially Middletown and Smyrna, they're doing this a lot. Why are they getting rid of a lot of the farmland?
Building developments.
Yeah, they're building developments.
to build?
So a lot of things have changed in the last 50 years in Middletown and Smyrna because of they want to build more houses. They want to accommodate more people. And so unfortunately, it's cutting down trees.
So I'll put in man-made structures to include your military base thing.
Thank you.
Okay. And yeah, and then lastly, probably originally when we first came over, we cleared a lot of trees so we could plant crops and live off. So we removed the trees to make farmland. Okay. So those are several reasons. You needed to do 2, but 3 would be good as well. We got several here if you count paper, firewood, and lumber as extras.
Yeah.
All right. So that was kind of just to get us thinking about deforestation. Now here comes our problem. So why does deforestation lead to an increase in carbon dioxide in the air? So what we're missing from here is the letter from Dr. Corey. So let's take a look at that. That is here. Videos are in the way. Okay, here it is. So first off, he thanks us for our hard work with the biodome and figuring out that burying dead matter is not a good thing for a number of reasons that hopefully you guys explained in chapter 3. But now he needs our help with a new problem. He was contacted by a group of farmers who are trying to understand how cutting down the trees in their area, what we now know as deforestation, has increased the carbon dioxide in the air. They know that increased carbon dioxide and global climate change are related. I will say this morning I heard on, I say good morning Google, and it tells me the news. And one of the news things said that the latest reading of carbon dioxide has gone up again. That even with the pandemic going on, the levels of carbon dioxide are still going up. So anyway.
Wow, what a surprise.
Yeah, and they want to understand more about this so they can take steps to fix the problem. He sent us some claims and evidence for us to look through. And this lesson was really, really made for the classroom. But you guys have it in front of you. Do the best you can. So the first claim was there is less photosynthesis. So again, keep in mind, deforestation, how does it lead to carbon dioxide in the air? So the first claim was there's less photosynthesis, so that increased the carbon dioxide in the air, right? Is that possible? So here is a little graphic organizer to try to understand. Is less photosynthesis, because I guess we cut down the trees, going to increase carbon dioxide in the air, and why? What do you guys got? And that says it all, doesn't it, Ben? So this is the tough part. I mean, this is taking from what we learned in chapter 1 about photosynthesis. So again, if you wanted to, you could look it up. If you don't remember, you could go back to chapter 1, look at that one reading that had that graphic organizer about photosynthesis, or you could look it up on the internet. So if I was just to take my phone out and say to my phone, what is photosynthesis? Just to refresh my brain, it says the process by which green plants and some other organisms use sunlight to synthesize foods, we know that as energy storage molecules, from carbon dioxide and water. So think about that. They're using carbon dioxide and water to make these energy storage molecules. So if we're not making these, if we're not doing photosynthesis, then we're not taking the carbon dioxide out of the air. Would that allow the carbon dioxide to increase if we're not taking it out?
No, that would decrease, right?
All right, think about it. So we've got all this carbon dioxide coming back in, and plants aren't taking it from the air anymore. So what's going to happen to the carbon dioxide in the air?
It's gonna.
Oh wait, it's gonna increase. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to increase. So this could be a cause. Less photosynthesis would not take carbon dioxide out of the air, and so therefore the carbon dioxide would increase. All right. Our second claim: there is more cellular respiration, so carbon dioxide increases in the air. So again, we got the same effect, but we got a different cause. So why would more cellular respiration lead to an increase in carbon dioxide? So again, you got to think back to chapter 2, and you've got to maybe go back to chapter 2, or with the technology we have today, oops, I hit the button already, just say, what is cellular respiration? And it says down here from botanica.com, so make sure you got good sources, the process by which organisms combine oxygen with foodstuff, which we know is energy storage molecules, and it discards as waste products carbon dioxide and water. Okay, all right, well, let's talk about that. If there's more cellular respiration, we're going to discard more carbon dioxide into the air. All right. Who's scratching? Stop that. Mute yourself if you're going to continue. Anyway, so think about that. If we are doing more cellular respiration, we're going to get rid of more carbon dioxide in the air. It's just like as Luca was saying earlier, we breathe out, and Zach, you wrote a couple comments about it. You know, big inhale, short exhale, or whatever you said.
Yeah.
So the exhaling is going to have a higher level of carbon dioxide. So that is going to increase the carbon dioxide in the air if we're breathing out more. If other organisms are breathing out more. Remember, all organisms are doing cellular respiration. However, is that connected to deforestation? I don't know. So we've got some evidence cards, and here are our evidence cards. So let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so evidence card A, take a look at that one. Again, these graphs, you know, I always say, you know, some people say pictures are worth 1,000 words. So it takes a lot of time to look at these. I consider these to be a graphic organizer or a picture. And so let's take a look. So we've got the title. Let's always look at that. Population of trees and grasses after deforestation. So after deforestation, this is what's happening. So we've got a couple different things. We've got population over here and years of deforestation after deforestation. So we've got 5 years afterwards. Okay. Trees. Well, that makes sense. If we're deforesting, we're taking trees out. We started here. We're taking trees out. They're going down, down, down. There's not as many of them. But something else is happening with this line. So what's this? This is the population of grass. It's going up.
Oh.
Yeah. So there are more plants going on. Look, 4,000 up here. There was only 2,000 to begin with. If you added these two up, you had 2,500. That's only 2,500. Now we've got 4,000 of these and pretty much no trees. But anyway, that's something to think about. So here's what it looked like in the area. Some trees in the background, but maybe that was year 3 or something. Okay? Questions about evidence card A?
No.
All right.
I got it down.
You got it? You understand it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's another evidence card. This is populations after deforestation, so very similar. But now we're looking at decomposers, cows, other consumers. And wait, there's this little asterisk next to it. Let's go up here. It means somewhere else there's more information. There it is. These consumers, since they're kind of vague here, to get more detail, are deer, birds, squirrel, and other forest animals. So this is interesting. Remember, I think our 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 match up. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so we've got a population of, what is this line for?
That line's for the decomposers.
Yeah, so there's the decomposers slightly going up, especially from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and then kind of flattening out. What do we got? The stars. What is that?
That's the wait, what? The other consumers.
Yeah, the other consumers, which we know to be the deer, the birds, the squirrel, and other forest animals. And this kind of makes sense that it's going down. And it kind of matches the slope of this line, which was the trees, doesn't it? So look at that. It's kind of, well, it's a little sharper here than this line, but still going down till year 2, kind of flattening off in year 3, 4, and 5. And here we have a flattening off as well at 3, 4, and 5. So interesting that they match up. That kind of makes sense. If the forest goes away, the animals that live in the forest also are going away. And then lastly, we have the circle line,
which is the cows.
It is. And so what we have here, and if you think about what the data is telling you, is probably farmers brought in these cows, and these look like milk cows, so they're dairy cows, I should say, made for making milk, and they can only milk so many at a time. So they probably just kind of keep their herd of cows about the same. So once they brought them in, then they kind of flattened off and stayed the same. So that's what that evidence card beast is. And so you guys were supposed to have these in your hands in the classroom, and you were supposed to be, kind of talking with your partner about them instead of me talking with you about them. So anyway, lastly, or a couple more, we got evidence card C. This was interesting, I thought. We've got each year one tree produces a lot more energy storage molecules than one grass plant. Well, that kind of helps me because I kind of was feeling that way, but I did see this up here in the numbers, 2,500 organisms to now 4,000 organisms. So counting plants and or grasses and trees. So now we can see that, well, even though there's more grasses, they're a much smaller organism. So the number up here might not be as crucial, and because there's so many more organisms, but they're smaller. And so when we think about this, the tree being this big and having all these leaves and spreading out into this upper space is getting a lot more carbon dioxide out of the air and making a lot more energy storage molecules. Where down here, if we imagine that the tree was gone and all this grass was down here, you're not getting the amount of carbon dioxide coming out of the air as you do all inside this tree. Okay? Makes sense. We need carbon dioxide to make energy storage molecules. So these guys are making a lot more, trees are making a lot more than grasses. All right. And lastly, we have evidence card D that, hey, once the trees were cut, some wood was used for building. So they made it into lumber, like we had talked about back in the warm-up. And some was left in the field to decompose. Maybe the field was going to be turned into grazing land and they wanted the field to have some organic matter in it. Or maybe they just didn't, the limbs and stuff at the top of the tree weren't good enough for making lumber. And so they just left it there. Who knows? Either way, they left some to decompose. And the decomposers now have all these energy storage molecules from the dead trees to use up. And so as they use up, they're also doing cellular respiration and releasing carbon dioxide into the air. So see how we're using stuff from chapter 1, chapter 2, and even kind of using our knowledge about what happened in the biodome with the decomposers to understand what's happening here. Okay? So that was the evidence cards, and we were supposed to analyze the evidence and kind of with your partner, but again, we weren't in class, so we couldn't really do that. Look at the evidence cards, try to just work together to work, think through it. All right, then we finally get to part 4, and you guys are supposed to sort and kind of figure out, does one evidence card support claim 1 more than the other? So I'm gonna go back to the claims. Oops, yeah. Here are this is chapter 3. I want to be in chapter 4. Give me a second to get 2 kind of screens up. So in the classroom, we would have had printed out versions of the claims sitting on our desk and the evidence card sitting on our desk. And we would have been able to sort them on the table. So in part 2, we had the claims, right? Claim 1, there's less photosynthesis, so carbon dioxide goes up. In claim 2, there's more cellular respiration, so carbon dioxide goes up. All right, that's our claims. And then in here, we need to sort our evidence. That's what it's asking us to do. So by doing this at home, yeah, there wasn't really a lot for you guys to do because this was made for you to work together with classmates. All right, so let's go look at it. Evidence card A. How many of you say this supports claim 1, photosynthesis decreased? Photosynthesis decreased. Does this evidence support that idea?
Yes. Wait, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does, Ben, because what's happening is the tree numbers are going down. We also know from this piece of evidence that, hey, trees produce a lot more storage molecules and do a lot more photosynthesis than grasses do. So we see this trend of trees going down. That means less photosynthesis is probably taking place, right?
Yes.
Okay. Could you argue that this also supports claim 2? Well, you probably could, not having card C to think about, but you could probably think about, well, there's more organisms doing cellular respiration because there's 4,000 here, where there's only 2,500 here. And so you could make that argument that, hey, more organisms, more cellular respiration, possibly making more carbon dioxide in the air that way. For this one, yeah, I think you could argue either way, but once you see card C, I think it's a better argument about the trees going down, that photosynthesis is probably being done less.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and now we have card B. So card B, what would you say? Claim 1 or claim 2? Claim 1 was less photosynthesis. Claim 2 was more cellular respiration.
Yes.
Which one?
More cellular respiration.
All right, Ben. Yeah, I like that thought. So you got decomposers going up, so they're going to do more cellular respiration. You've got more cows in the world, in this part of the world, and so they're doing more cellular respiration. So I definitely see where Ben is thinking, hey, we've got a higher population of these two organisms, and so that could increase the cellular respiration, which would release more carbon dioxide in the air, causing an increase. We have this going on too, though. So we've got a decrease in other consumers, deer, birds, squirrels, and forest animals. So
Well, that's because the home was torn down.
Yeah. So that is going to cause a lesser amount of cellular respiration because their numbers are lower. But we do have this increase in cows and an increase in decomposers. So that's good. All right. We've talked about C already. Which one did we say kind of supported more?
Claim 1.
Claim 1, yeah. Thank you, Zach. And then we have card D. Which one do you guys think? Claim 1 or claim 2?
Claim 1.
So claim 1 was about less photosynthesis. If we cut down the trees, are we doing less photosynthesis?
Oh no, we're doing more photosynthesis.
No, we're cutting down the trees. The trees are not. You're right. The trees are not doing photosynthesis anymore. So this could support claim 1. But again, if people wanted to talk about the decomposers, right? If you want to talk about the decomposers, which this evidence card is about, you could say, well, the decomposers are doing more cellular respiration than maybe was happening in the past. And so that's going to increase the carbon dioxide. So I think you could go with A and D. You could kind of go either way, and B. And there's pieces of evidence in each one of those that you could pull out of there to help support either claim. Does that make sense? And that's how, the world really works. It's never really always cut and dry, like maybe some science things were done in elementary schools and stuff. So we're trying to get you guys to think critically about these things and being able to look through several pieces of evidence and come to your own conclusion. So as we go into the homework, you get to pick which claim you like the best. Which one do you feel is supported by the evidence? So not one you like the best, but the one that you feel the evidence supports the most. So you've got some evidence of both, that there was less photosynthesis and that there was more cellular respiration happening. You've got some evidence of both, but which one do you think had the biggest impact on the carbon dioxide increasing? And that's what you need to pick and then explain your writing in this part right here. So I'm looking forward to reading what you guys write there and how you piece together the evidence with the claim that you chose, reasoning it out. So again, this should be like a CER, 5 or so sentences at least, to explain the evidence that we saw in these cards. Don't forget, one thing that can't happen right now is me and Miss Lucca kind of reading your work as you're doing it. I don't know if you guys remember in class, we'd have you bring up your paper before you turned it in the bin, and we'd look over and say, yeah, fix this sentence right here, fix that, fix this, make that better. We can't do that right now. So what I would recommend is using Grammarly. And so here is a sentence going back to 3.4, actually was done by my son. And you can see it suggested that he used the word were, instead of was. And that does fit better. I think that your biodome failed because there were not enough decomposers. So it's a plural thing, not a singular thing. I think that sounds right to me. And so that's one way to make sure your writing looks good. He's got capitalization and periods. And so over here, he's got pretty good, very clear, very engaged. Delivery is just right. There are some things that he was to pay for Grammarly that he could learn more about, but unfortunately, we're not paying for that right now. So I would use Grammarly. You do have to create your account, but use your school account. Use your smyrnaeagles.org account and copy and paste your writings into Grammarly, whether it's your words for the biodome, like this one is, or for the newest one that we're working on for the deforestation issue. So, questions, guys? How'd I do?
You did great.
Pretty good.
Oh, thank you. How Miss Lucca do?
Pretty
great
good.
too.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. How focused did Darian look through the whole thing?
Pretty unfocused.
Pretty bland.
All right, guys. Miss Lucca, you were getting ready to say something. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's kind of all we've got. Next week, we're planning on giving you the last 3 lessons in this unit.
Okay.
So 4.2, I'm going to warn you, there's not that much to do in lesson 4.2. It's really just a review of what you did in 4.1 and getting you ready to write your official response to the statutory, explaining his answer to the deforestation question, which is lesson 4.3. So 4.3 is going to be your large paragraph that you're writing, and lesson 4.4 is just the end of unit assessment, just to see if you've gotten a handle on the main concepts in the unit.
Okay.
I would go back and look at 2.4 and the questions you got right and wrong on the critical juncture before you take that final assessment on 4.4. So that would help, I think, if you guys do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good idea, Mr. Hurd.
Okay.
And so we recommend trying to get any work that you want to be done by next Friday, the 12th. But the absolute last day that anyone is accepting work is Monday, the 15th. So that way we can get your grades in. Report cards will be available on the last day of school on Wednesday, the 17th.
Yeah,